So I thought it'd be fun to do a recap of the Mustang's first week or so in Canada. You can watch all of these vlogs in entirety on the Mustang playlist. So these first few clips are from when we went to go pick them up in Nevada, and as you can see, we are quite a ways away from their paddock, and they were still running away from us when we approached. If I had tried to go in there, they would have started running back and forth and could have tried to scale a fence or something. They were very nervous and weren't at ease, and if they had more space, they would have chosen to seek more distance from us than they already did. Day one in Canada, they didn't want to come close to us at all. The closest that they came was when they walked up to take a drink of water, but they were still quite a ways away. We didn't get any closer to them than we did when we picked them up in Nevada initially, but they had just gotten off a lengthy road trip, so I also didn't push it or anything because I just wanted them to settle in and relax into their new lifestyle. On day two, they started to get a little bit more curious and started to come over to check us out, but the way in which they came up to us was quite a bit more nervous. They were really stilted and slow in their movements, and they were blowing, and you could hear their nostrils fluttering. And if my mom had moved at all in these clips, they would have gone shooting off and running away. They were very, very nervous, but they're super curious of us and what we were doing, so they wanted to come check it out. Basically, the goal in handling them this way is having them slowly get accustomed to us being around and let their guard down and start to just treat us as background noise first, but then be curious of us and find us reinforcing and rewarding to be around. Since they were captured by force and have largely been handled and trailer loaded by force, I want to make their first connection with people something pleasant where they're actually getting to choose to be present. So that's kind of the method of training that we're using. If they'll take food from our hands, that's a great way to reinforce. But in the beginning, they really didn't want to. So just getting that willing approach where I'm not tracking them down and walking up to them, they're getting to approach me and check me out. It allows them to have more agency over their decisions and makes the whole process a lot less terrifying for them. So that's what I was going for. And as you can see, they're still really, really nervous, even though they're making the decision to come up to me. They're not comfortable at all with it. So if I tried to encroach on their space more than what they wanted to, that's where I could get aggression or fear reactions where they try to scale a fence or where they might lunge at, bite, or try to kick me. But if I let them stay within their threshold of comfort and their window of tolerance and don't send them over that by allowing them to come to me and make the decisions autonomously and not trapping them, then I can avoid a lot of those aggressive or fearful responses that could be dangerous to humans. In these clips filmed by my boyfriend, you can see how they're rocking back on their front legs and really, especially Mesa, she's really just staying in a position where if she needs to retreat quickly, she can. So that really shows how they're not comfortable. If I were to reach towards them at this point, they would probably run, or if they felt trapped, that's where you could get them lunging at or trying to bite you, which is why I don't make any moves to touch them yet, because their body language makes it abundantly clear that they're not ready for that. So it wouldn't serve me at all to try to do that in the first place. So being patient is really important. So by day 4, the bigger changes that I was noticing was just their willingness to approach me. They were starting to come over a lot quicker. It used to take them a lot longer to build up the courage to finally come over and check out what we're doing. The approach was getting more comfortable. They were approaching quicker. They weren't stopping as much at a distance to check me out before coming right up close. So there's a lot of changes in their behavior and their level of comfort coming up close to me, which is a stepping stone towards what I want, which is eventually being able to touch them and handle them. So having them approach me quickly and with more relaxation is huge. They're still very nervous and they're hyper vigilant, but they're approaching a lot quicker, and there is a greater degree of trust that I'm not going to hurt them than there was in the first couple of days. So it was a really nice improvement to see, even if I'm not haltering them or riding them at this point. They're starting to let their guard down and get a lot more comfortable around me and not view me as much of a threat. Key point in what I'm doing to avoid flight behavior is the fact that they can turn around and walk away at any point, and when they do, I don't pursue them. If I were to pursue them, they would probably start running and I would get a lot more flight reactions. The fact that they can leave at any point without any repercussions or me pushing pressure on them more is how I avoid these big responses. And this is what can make them appear more tame than they actually are, because I'm not sending them so far over threshold that we're getting these big flight reactions that people would see as characteristic of a wild horse. I'm sitting very still and letting them approach me. If I were to move suddenly, they would run, or if I were to reach towards them, or if I had them in a smaller pen where they were trapped, that's where you'd see a lot more of these responses, because they would need to be offering them. But horses as a species are honestly really passive, and they like to choose the path of least resistance whenever possible. They don't really want to be aggressive or do anything like harsh towards people. So when you get those responses, it's usually because the person has done something to instigate the response, or even if it seems to happen out of nowhere, the horse has a learned history where they've had to respond with aggression like that in order to protect themselves. So those are key takeaways when you're working with horses like this that are nervous and not handled. So at this point, every single day, reliably, they are coming up to approach us and check us out, which is huge because they've decided that we're not so threatening that they should just completely avoid us. They're very curious of what we're doing, even if they're still cautious. And the caution also translates into like different sitting positions, different standing positions, different movements, because horses don't generalize us yet as like a singular concept. Anytime we move, speak differently, or do anything differently, it's a new thing for them to learn not to be afraid of. So how reliably they approach and check us out is huge, especially like when we'll be standing, sitting, laying down, walking around, using different vocal tones and whatnot. They're learning all of these different things and like human mannerisms, many of which, like when we're not really fully focused on them, we're not always aware of like how we're moving around and whatnot. That could be potentially fear inducing for them. And even different smells. Like I've noticed if I've eaten a meal earlier, depending on what I've eaten, they don't want to accept food from my hands if I've just eaten something. So the way I smell, the way I sound, the way I move, all of these things are things that they're taking into account that I might not even be noticing at the time. So it's something to be aware of when you're handling any horse. Like they notice a lot more than what you might think. And their sense of smell is such a huge safety mechanism for them that they use it more than what people give them credit for. And being able to use all their senses like that is what keeps them safe, because if I smelled like something new and dangerous, getting that sense of smell before they even come close would keep them safe. So it's also something to consider with like the direction the wind is blowing, other sounds in the distance, and all these things. They stack up upon each other. Even when these horses have already started getting used to me, there's days where they could in theory be more stressed, like if there was stormy weather, if there's a dog barking in the background, if something scared them before I arrived. All of these things could change how they respond to me on any given day, because they've had to be very careful in order to survive in the wild. But I'm really pleased with how quickly within this last week, with such short sessions, because a lot of the time we're not spending a ton of time around there handling them. They're very short sessions that we're spending with them. And they were starting to take food from our hands by the end of the first week and reliably approaching pretty quickly and just showing so much curiosity. All of these things are really good traits and bode well for the future of developing them. And it'll be really nice because when they are eventually getting ridden and handled, they'll have chosen to interact with people by choice rather than me taking it from them by force, which is something I really wanted to do in my handling of them. So yeah, that's a little recap on my plan and my process. You can watch these full vlogs on the Mustang playlist on my main channel page, and I will be posting more throughout the week, as these vlogs are mostly from like before the weekend. So I have more footage from this last week that I'll be sharing. It's already up on my Patreon, so if you subscribe as a Patreon subscriber, you can get early access to those videos while supporting my work with horses by subscribing. So yeah, this is how I'm working with my two new Mustangs, using no ropes, no restraints, and working with them in a 2-acre field. It's actually a 4-acre field cut in half, but I can't let them out into the back half until they're a little bit more tame, as the fencing isn't lower, so I'd need to extend it before letting them out there. But this is the process that I've been doing, and I'm really excited to see how they're developing. It's been going really well, and their stress level has been super, super low. The amount of flight reactions that I've instigated has been really, really low for the level of fear fear that they feel being around people. So I'm really happy with how I've been able to keep them as quiet and happy as I have, because I've given them very little reason so far to be more afraid of people than they already are, and they're getting a lot more comfortable. So it's really nice to see.